he along with Schneider in Schneider and Kay 94, identified, well, the title of their paper gives it to you, Life as a Manifestation of the Second Law of Thermodynamics. It's not that the second law of thermodynamics, as physicists use it, is singularly untrue. It's just not relevant the way that physicists use it. On the other hand, if we accept that life is away from equilibrium, what James and Eric Schneider said was, any system away from equilibrium, as you try to push it further from equilibrium, it will do whatever it can do to stop that happening. In other words, all of the things that go on in life are these steep gradients where life is fighting not to be pushed away from equilibrium. And out of this you get elaborate structures that dissipate more energy and so forth. So half of life yields to thermodynamic equations. Sort of funny ones, Prigogine sorts of things, or that, further out than Prigogine in fact. Life consists of a far from equilibrium emergent structure, sort of like a whirlpool, but much more elaborate and fancy than that. That's one half of it. Inside the biological system, separate from the thermodynamics, are codes and structures. The critical thing about thermodynamics is it's rate dependent. We're really talking Heisenberg here. That is to say, you can't know where a particle's going and where it is. And that's not just one of these social science. Well, you could look, you could. No. The one equation eats the other one for lunch. Suck it up. So the critical thing about thermodynamics is dynamic. It's rate dependent. It generates a set of thermodynamic laws. Separate from that is a set of coded constraints. The obvious codes in biology is DNA, but there's a whole bunch of other ones, like mating rituals, hormones, and all of this stuff is coded. The great thing about codes is they're rate independent. In other words, here is this beer. I'm drinking it at a rate. At what rate is it beer? No, it's just beer, that's all. So the only way we can deal with the world is with frozen structures, which get names, and we code, and then there's thermodynamics and flow and flux, and those two things come together. And sometimes they offer contradictions. Howard Patti made a really nice account of this. I stuck it in my 1982 book with a wonderful set of images. Patti was talking about American football, and even by 1982, I arrived here in 1970, I hadn't got a grip of American football. And so I did an interpretation of an image of American football, and people said, no, it's a draw pass, you can tell it, no, it's just not. I'm sorry, I got it all wrong. but the image I was using there was an image of the Superdome, and then the next plate was an image of inside the Superdome looking down, and you could tell there was a football game going on. And then the third one was Jim Plunkett back to throw, and various big, hefty, hairy guys beating up on each other. And then the fourth image was completely black. And Chicago, who was publishing the book, said, you didn't send us that figure. I said, I think you can handle it. It's completely black. And the legend said, seconds after figure 83C, 83D is Plunkett has now thrown a brilliant and decisive forward pass, seen here from inside the ball. so actually changed the scale. But the issue with football, mostly in that book, was this interesting question. I mean, if you ask a football player, well, you notice in football, and in fact, my God, Green Bay, they almost caught us up doing this. You know that third string quarterback Chicago had? And all of a sudden he was playing without a huddle? Suddenly playing real fast? The thing is, if you can change the rate of play, and it's still football, how come a dynamical thing like football can change speed without changing the significance and meaning? And the answer is this, that when the quarterback goes back to throw, he throws at a certain rate, the running back runs at a certain rate, and if he gets it right, they meet. So football is a rate-dependent game. On the other hand, if you can change the rate at which you play it, it doesn't change things, it must somehow be rate-independent. Well, the rate-independent part is the huddle. That's policy. That's planning. That's codes. And the effect of this then is you can shut that stuff down, and you still have to get the dynamics of the dynamic part of the game. So everything that's really interesting has rate dependence and rate independence. Every tennis point is earned the same way. And you return, and if you make it, but some points matter more than others. If it's match point, it makes all the difference. And in fact, that's the difference between number 10 and number 1. Incidentally, the 100th best player in the world and the 10th player, the difference between them is the same as the difference between number 10 and number 1. The critical deal about number 1 is it may be match point, but he's able somehow to play it just like it's a point. In other words, he focuses upon the dynamics of it. That's what makes them win. So we have then this tension between rate dependence and rate independence. So here's this biological entity. It's got its thermodynamics, its input, top high quality stuff, output, low quality stuff, organizing itself on the principles of the second law of thermodynamics, but a far from equilibrium version of it. Separate from that, you have codes. And these codes take many forms, but they don't exist at a rate. What does UUU in your body means phenylalanine? At what rate does it mean it? No, it just means it. So we have this tension. Now, as we look at sustainability and livability, I would say that livability is the thermodynamic component. People do what they do because there's a gradient. I don't like it now, I want that, I'm going to do it. That's what livability is about. It's not planned. There's no plan, there's no code. Well, I mean, it sort of is, but that's just to execute it when you want to do what you want to do. But livability, there's no planning in livability. People do what the hell they want to do. And you can't stop them. I get really irritated at screeching greenies who say, well, they should. Yeah, sure they should, but they ain't going to. No biological or social system that I know has ever taken the prudent path. They never do it. Because livability is always sending them steep down the hill, because if you don't do that, somebody else is going to go straight down the hill and grab your resources from you. So you're going to lose. So you obviously have to be, at one level, profligate. But at another level, there's a price to going down the hill, which is the surface is folding. You run out of resources. Now, it'd be really good if you said, well, we're going to run out of resources. So wouldn't it be good if we actually were careful and clever and use less resource to get ourselves into a position where we can have a much larger and much more reliable energy source like wind, for example? And wouldn't it be great? And then, of course, you have these self-righteous screeching greenies saying, Hummers, evil, Prius, good. No, the real villain is the Prius. Let me introduce the concept of Jevons paradox. Jevons in 1860s was looking at British coal consumption. He was very scared that Britain would run out of coal. I mean, they were using a lot of it. The thing that he noticed, which was the paradox, is in 1800, steam engines were a horrifying 0.5% efficient. 99% of the energy of the coal went up the flue. By 1850, they had got that up to 2.5%. And you'll think, well, that's not very good. Yeah, but it's 500% better than 0.5%. And so you'd reckon then that with that improved technology, we would be in great shape and start cut back on how much coal we'd be using. Didn't happen. The reverse happened. Because in 1800, the only people who could afford to run a steam engine to 0.5% efficiency were people who owned coal mines, because they always had coal. Any coal that hadn't sold to stick into the engine, pumps it out, makes more coal. So they were in good business. But all of a sudden, 2.5%, not very good. But it's good enough for you to start using steam engines for weaving and spinning and pumping and lots. So all of a sudden, consumption goes up. Improvements in technology, which are of course coded clever ways to do things, are almost always used to continue profligate consumption. You know the trouble with the Prius? It's going to make sucking the last of the gasoline down economical. Hummers, no trouble. They're going to go extinct. The damn Priuses. Americans are going to be able to afford to keep driving even as the price of gasoline goes up. It's the Prius that's the evil thing. And so these things are very, very, very counterintuitive.
So should we stop making them then and just stick with the Hummers until we run out of gas? Or
Should. Should is difficult. Should is difficult. You see, you can't get the buggers to stop going down the hill, see? You can't stop them. In the end, they're going to go, oh my God! And at that point, they'll turn. What we take about here is an image of a folded pleat. And they're coming down the hill, about to go over. And a lot of systems do simply just go over. For example, a whole bunch of termites they live in wood, and they eat themselves out of house and home in literal terms. But then there's a whole bunch of other termites that went, whoop, and they came to the back of the pleat. And the way they did that was they stopped living in wood, and they started living in feces stuck together with saliva. And they had big houses. And then they sent all their soldiers and such out to gather wood, lousy wood, dead twigs, you know, but enormously more. See, the great thing is that as you move to lower quality material, there's much more of it. I mean, if you want to get gold, go to Fort Knox. It's easy. And in fact, when Oak Ridge National Labs was being established and they wanted to get those great big electromagnets working, they said, well, we don't have any copper, it's all being used for shells. So, we got nothing else? They said, silver will work. So they went to Fort Knox, backed up a truck and said, we'll take 48 tons of silver. They said, Fort Knox said, we don't deal with tons, sir, it's pennyweight. So they multiplied it up and took billions of pennyweights. And they gave it back at the end of the war. And the copper was then suddenly available. So, if you want a lot of gold and silver, just go to Fort Knox. But there's not actually much gold in Fort Knox. You know how much gold there is in what the humans have? You know, humans are jealous about gold. When we've got it, we never let it go. Hardly ever do we let it go. For example, there are firms that carve gold, and their buildings are hermetically sealed so the gold can't get out. Better than that, they run their own sewage works. Because there's enough gold that gets ingested by enough workers to enough extent that the feces coming out of their sewage plant is actually a decent source of gold. Once we got gold, we don't let it go. Guess how much gold we have? It's only enough to fill 2 Olympic-sized swimming